Welcome to Cox Business Spotlight. I'm Jimmy Frederick. Today we talk with Lee Feinswag, host of Sports Monday. It's one of the longest running sports shows in the area.
Yes. Okay, no problem. I'm actually doing interviews in my house. You wouldn't. It's a long story. Good. Wet t-shirts for everybody. Everything that I've ever done in life, especially professionally, has been driven by whether it would be fun. So I thought this show would be fun. I thought Sports Monday would be a really fun idea. I got hired to go to work at the Hannibal, Missouri Courier-Post, a small PM daily in Northeast Missouri. That was my first journalism job. I had a connection there. Somebody I graduated with from SIU was already there, called me and said, "You ought to take this job." And I think they hired me over the phone. That's how small it was. So I went there, and after 7 months, was all too ready to leave, and caught on as the sports editor of a chain of weekly papers in Kansas City, Missouri. And I was there 2.5 years. But in 1981, my daughter was very young, and we were thinking of having another child, and the newspapers folded. And I was left high and dry, thinking, well, what's going to happen here? So I applied to newspapers all over the country, and I ended up getting hired at the Winston-Salem Journal in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Went there as a sports desk man. They told me in a year I'd be off and doing mostly sports writing. And 3.5 years later, never getting off that sports desk, I came to the Baton Rouge Advocate. In the spring of 1995, I was talking to a guy named Todd Horn. Todd Horn worked for a company called Bazooka, but he loved sports and he loved sports writing. He used to come up and work on at nights and weekends, take scores, do rewrites and that stuff. He was a cool guy and we were friends. I said, "Todd, I got an idea for a TV show. I'd like to call it Sports Monday. It would be on Monday nights. A couple of lazy boy chairs, talk sports, take phone calls. Maybe it would grow from there, see what you had." He goes, "That's a great idea." I said, "And I want to be the host." He said, "Even better." He said, "I'll produce it." I go, "What does that mean?" That's how much I knew. And we get towards the summer, and all of a sudden, Todd and this other guy who he had enlisted to help us, they both kind of backed away. They realized this was a ridiculous undertaking, and Todd had a lot of other things going on in his life, but he did commit some advertising money from Bazooka that would help me. And in retrospect, if that advertising money hadn't been there, I would never have gotten off the ground. So we went on the air the first time, September 25th, 1996. And the set was still wet. I had never spoken to a live TV camera as a host before. I'd been a guest of shows or been interviewed on TV, but to be the host was just ridiculous. And the very first guest was Scott Rabelais, who was a sports writer at The Advocate with me, and then Dale Weiner, the Catholic High football coach. They were the first two guests. And one of the things I did was a prop that night was I have one of those old flip cell phones.
Hello.
Then it was like high tech. And I had my wife prepared to call the phone at a certain time, and I was going to act like it was a conversation with my mother, being worried that I was on the show or however it was, because I was afraid I was going to be so nervous that I needed something to calm me down. And I had planted also a bunch of people to call in the show that night, because I didn't know whether I was going to be out there dying or how it was going to go. So two things happened. One was the cell phone gig was pretty funny, and it did relax me. And the other was that the people I planted to call couldn't get in. We actually got phone calls. After the third week, I was only losing about $500 a week to get on the air, because it's a big nut to cover. There's airtime and production. It's very expensive to put on a television show. And I was laying in bed one night, and I was kind of like, you know how you toss and turn and it's eating you up. And all of a sudden, Brenda wakes up and she says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know, I'm just thinking about this TV show. I don't know what to do, and we're losing money, and I don't know whether it's worth it, if I'm just doing it to make myself feel good, or what the deal is." And she said, "Well, why don't you just quit?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to quit, because I think it's going to be a really good show. I think what we've done so far is good, but I see the future. It could be a really good show. There's a lot of cool stuff we could do." And she said, "Well, then just keep doing it." And she rolled over and went back to sleep. And I said, "Okay, then I will." And I never worried about it ever again. This spring of 2009 is the end of the 14th season. We're kind of like the school year, kind of August through April, and then best of in the summertime. It's always a work in progress. Except for the news, nobody else has ever done this. And sometimes I say, wow, it's amazing. That's TV production right there.